Good evening, everyone. Hello. I'm Sarah Cohn. I am the Director and Curator of Exhibitions and Collections at the FIA. It is my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's program. This is part of our late night programming. Every Thursday night we are open late. So tell your friends and come regularly. Tonight, though, is a special Thursday night because we have with us artist John Dempsey. His exhibition is currently on view in our graphics gallery. It is called Fabrication in Transit, and it is on view from now until January 7th, 2024. So before I introduce our artist tonight, I would like to thank the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation for their continued support, which is so deeply appreciated here at the FIA. Yeah, all right. I got a lot of thanks, so keep them ready. I would also really like to thank the citizens of Genesee County for demonstrating their support of our programs by means of the Genesee County Arts Education and Cultural Enrichment Millage, which provides free entry to the FIA for Genesee County residents every day that we are open. So thank you so much. A big thank you, of course, goes to Huntington Bank for sponsoring Huntington Free Saturdays. This allows everyone beyond our county to have free access to the museum every Saturday. Thank you, Huntington. Got one more. And we also have a big thank you to the Ford Foundation Equity Fund of the Community Foundation of Greater Flint for making our ASL interpretation tonight possible. So, before we go any further, let's please take a moment and silence our cell phones. John Dempsey received his BFA from Michigan State University and an MFA from Central Washington University. He has also studied art at Wayne State University and Arizona State. He was born in Detroit, and he lived and maintained a studio in downtown Flint for over 25 years. He retired from Mott Community College's art department in 2016 and went on to teach drawing part-time at the College for Creative Studies in Detroit until moving his painting studio to Hillsborough, North Carolina in 2019. Tonight, John is going to give us a glimpse into his artwork and process, after which we will have a public Q&A where you can ask him any questions that you may have. Tomorrow, we also have another event. So tomorrow evening at 6 p.m., you will find John at Factory 2, where he will have a program called Let's Talk Shop. This program is free and open to the public, and community members are invited to share personal accounts of humorous or emotional stories, accounts of friendship, challenges, and any of their memories from their experience working at Buick City and AC Delco here in Flint. So if you or anyone you know is a retired auto worker, we would love to have you join us for that program tomorrow night at Factory 2. And if you're not, we still would like you, to attend. Feel free. We would love it. It's going to be a wonderful night of sharing stories. More information on this event can be found on our website, and the address for Factory 2 is on the screen. So without further ado, please give a warm Flint welcome to John Dempsey.
Thank you, Sarah. Good evening. I have some written some thoughts down, so I'm going to be reading. It's an honor to have the opportunity to exhibit and discuss my work with you here at the FIA. I would like to thank, Sarah, John Henry, and Tracy Glab for the invitation to exhibit here in the Graphics Gallery. Thank you. Also, Rachel Holsteg, who curated Fabrication in Transit, composing the show, planning out the installation, and looking after the many details involved. It takes experience and considerable effort by many people to make things look as correct and effortless as they do here at the FIA. It's very exciting and also a bit surreal to be here presenting tonight. Normally I'm seated out there with you. I've spent many, many hours here at the FIA Theater, and I refer to this as Flint's family room. Incidentally, I didn't realize how good looking we are as an audience. This is where Flint can come to hear stories about witches and devils and Salvatore Mundi, as well as listening to artists like Richard Hunt and Eddie Watkins discuss their work. My experience has been that often the less familiar topic to me was the more interesting and memorable presentation. This exhibition, Fabrication in Transit, contains work from over 42 years and features imagery from factory environments located in and around Flint, places where people go to work. It is my hope that this exhibition resonates here in Flint, particularly with the women and the men who have worked over the years in these unique factory environments. They have built not only lives for themselves and their families, but much of this country's post-World War II wealth. We tell ourselves and each other stories, fabrications, if you will. That's just what we do. And although a fabrication is often meant as a pejorative, as in a story meant to deceive, our memories can and do make liars of us all. Tonight's fabrication begins with the focus on the earliest work in the show, ink drawings that date from the early 1980s, then offers a short look at my painting and ends with the most recent work in the show, the watercolors of factory interiors. There should be time for questions, and hopefully you'll get out of here in time to find a table at Soriano's, Luigi's, or the Cork. In 1981, my young family and I were living in Midland, Michigan. I was 2 years out of Central Washington University with an MFA degree. I pulled a job description from a 3-ring binder at Midland's Department of Economic Security, the unemployment office, and was hired to work for a subcontractor at the Midland nuclear plant. That plant was going to be the first nuclear power plant ever located within a city limits. Science City, Midland, Michigan. The following is taken from the Midland Daily News. Quote, "The plans for a nuclear plant in Midland began in 1967, but after 17 years of on-again, off-again construction, hearings, and protests, on July 16, 1984, the then Consumers Power Company Board of Directors voted to cancel the project, which was 85% complete. In 1987, the Midland plant was converted into the Midland Cogeneration Venture, a natural gas-fired plant that was completed in 1990, end quote. But it's 1981, and I'm working for a subcontractor hired to install the 2 GE turbines. My job was to keep track of the blueprints and to make sure that the engineers, millwrights, laborers, and welders all had the most current version of prints to work from. When my bosses saw that I showed up sober, my job expanded. I was tasked with penciling in the field-run small-bore pipe, 2-inch and under, onto the blueprints as well. This was a complex steam-powered system, and it had plenty of gauges and condensation points in need of small drain pipes. There was plenty of scaffolding to climb on, looking for where the welders had decided to run those. During this time, I had serious doubts about the direction of my painting, not uncommon for someone fairly fresh out of graduate school, thrown out into the real world, as it were. I made a clean break from the non-objective, color system-oriented, formalist paintings that I had been making and decided to shift to landscape paintings from imagery based solely on my immediate experience and environment. What I had been learning in graduate school had caught up with my studio practice, but looking back now, perhaps, I just wanted to immerse, connect, and wallow in my predicament more directly by focusing my painting discipline on my immediate surroundings and circumstances, such as working at the Midland nuclear plant. One day at work and sketching during a break, someone whom I had never seen before threatened to have me fired on the spot and escorted out by security if caught sketching again inside of the plant. Forbidden. It seemed a bit odd. The general contractor, Bechtel, toured large Mandarin-speaking groups of people through the plant on a fairly regular basis, and they had plenty of cameras. I learned quickly that those places where I wanted to paint were often places where you needed permission to get into, and that if you needed permission to get in, then you could forget about it. Most of the access to work sites and factories that I've had over the course of my painting career has been unofficial access. Some might call it trespassing. Someone working at a plant would sneak me in. For example, Bobby Higgins, my brother-in-law, a union steward at GMAC Delco, brought me into his plant by saying that I was a union newsletter photographer. Michael Atchison, a millwright and a painter himself, snuck me into Buick City by handing me a pair of overalls in the parking lot and telling security that I was a painter. Sometimes the truth works out to be the best fabrication of all. Also, every once in a while, I would write a letter to someone like the chair and CEO of General Motors and explain how important it was that they let me in to chronicle it all. In fact, one time I asked John Henry if he would write a letter of introduction to be included with my plea. He graciously did. That one must have gotten lost in the mail. Meanwhile, back in 1981-82, I couldn't photograph or draw at work. But when our tiny house on Michigan Street in Midland settled down at night, I would work on ink drawings at the kitchen table. I'm showing you those now. They were done from memory, based on the machinery that I had crawled around on and under at work during the day. Those drawings are the early ink wash drawings in the show from the series titled Just My Machination. Sorry, Temptations. That series of drawings led into the earliest factory interiors and landscape paintings that have continued to this day. This is one of the first paintings of a factory interior, and when I look at it, I kind of look at it as, it looks like it's a tinted ink wash. So I was learning. This is entitled Front Standard, and it shows the portion of one of the turbines that was being worked on. The turbines themselves were pretty big and impressive. They looked like giant transmissions to me. That's my trained opinion. So this is also one of the earlier factory interior paintings that was kind of made up. Every once in a while, the newspaper would run a grainy black and white photo when they ran a story about the Midland nuclear plant and its progress while it was being constructed, and I would use those as a basis for the paintings. Right here, I'll show you, there's, if I can make it out, right here. That's a small Quonset hut where I was located along with 5 other people. And they were all supervisors. I was like a clerk, minimum wage clerk, just filing blueprints. And it was kind of like a David Mamet play to be in there. It was very interesting that all these high-powered supervisors would be like in there bantering about. And so I would go out and look for a small bore pipe. Okay, and then I wanted to show you, these are the last, that and the last one was factory work. This is one of the initial landscape paintings that I made. This is called Portrait of Annie with Factory Interior. And Annie is Anna Lane, my older sister. And the image on the left is from around World War II, a plant that I think was a well, it was I borrowed it. Early influences. Back as a child, there were things that our family liked to do in Detroit. Belle Isle, the Detroit Zoo, the Thanksgiving Day Parade, Sanders. Our family would also attend puppet shows at the Detroit Institute of Arts. It was usually Prokofiev's Peter and the Wolf. If memory serves, they were put on by a husband and wife team from somewhere deep in the Eastern Bloc. Theirs were the most fascinating and the most terrifying puppets ever, at least to this small child. We visited the DIA often, and I can't recall ever not knowing of Peter Bruegel's The Wedding Dance, dated from 1566. I loved this painting. When I was a child, as in high school, as an art student, and to this day, nothing I've learned in life has diminished my joy in viewing this painting. One of my art history instructors at Central Washington University was Quentin Fitzgerald, a retired Air Force officer who shared an interest in Northern European art and art of the Middle Ages. He might start his art history classes by projecting a slide of a painting by Bruegel, who you're seeing here. This is the Winter Hunters, or Grunwald, and then spend the rest of our class time talking about the Italian medievalist Umberto Eco's latest book and telling stories about what everyday life was like in Northern Europe during the Middle Ages. The Detroit Institute of Arts is embarrassingly rich in work of that time period, and it was exciting studying it in graduate school. It seemed relevant. The ink drawing in the show, titled Vagabond Cover, Homage to Peter Bruegel, 1981, was done as cover art for an edition of Vagabond magazine. Vagabond was a literary journal, a mimeomag, that was founded by Grant Bunch and John Bennett over a pitcher of beer in 1965. John Bennett became sole editor and publisher. He was married to one of my painting instructors, Cynthia Bennett. Vagabond published poetry, essays, and short stories by the likes of Saul Bellow, Henry Miller, Charles Bukowski and Linda King, Gary Snyder, and others. There's another example of a cover that is in the show as well. Another influence on my painting was and is Diego Rivera. His Detroit industry murals are similar to Peter Bruegel's The Wedding Dance, in that there isn't a time in my memory where I wasn't aware of them. Rivera's murals are one example of what contemporary landscape might look like for me. His paintings seem fearless, and he practiced the composition of inclusion. They were painted or created in 1932, 1933. I would like to share a family story with you from 1932, 1933. My father was 18 to 19 years old. He had just graduated from St. John's High School in Pittston, Pennsylvania. Pittston is a small anthracite coal mining town on the Susquehanna River, just downriver from Wilkes-Barre, Scranton. My mother and father were both born there and raised. Father had moved with his mother and sisters to the Detroit area. Detroit was a relatively good place to be during the depths of the Great Depression. He was picking up some part-time work, I believe painting signs for grocery store windows, and also going to art school part-time. He liked Carlos Lopez's painting classes at the Detroit Society of Arts and Crafts, up on West Grand Boulevard. You might know it as CCS, or the College for Creative Studies. Father and fellow classmates would sometimes walk or take a streetcar down Woodward to the Detroit Institute of Arts for free sandwiches that they handed out some weekdays. He remembered the scaffolding and talking to members of the crew working on the murals, but he didn't remember ever seeing Diego Rivera. I suspect that he started painting later in the day, Rivera did, after lunchtime, when that portion of the wall that he was to work on had been prepared. This is a painting I did which is called Quench, Homage to Diego Rivera. and dates from around 1984, 83. And it's the main part of the composition is the interior. It was taken from the interior of GMAC, AC Delco. The Detroit of my youth was a large, lively, noisy, stinky, fascinating place, and I remember as a kid wondering how it all worked. Right before my 15th birthday, my father took me to the Fort Wayne building in Detroit, and he signed me up with working papers. Working papers allowed minors to hire into factories with safety-related restrictions based on child labor law. I ended up working summers in a number of factories during middle school, high school, and also as an undergraduate at Michigan State University. Later on, as a landscape painter, the factory environment seemed to be subject matter suitable for inclusion. It was an environment familiar to me. My goal was to paint the landscape, not a landscape. And what should a contemporary landscape painting look like? And how does one create a visual equivalent to our experience of place? One thing that seemed apparent to me was that it would require a composition of inclusion, composition in which all the different places and environments that we experience would be included. Factory floor, too. What follows are two examples of paintings from roughly that time period. This was called Portrait of Betty with RWC Bus Welder, which was an outfit in Bay City. On the right here is if I can get my, whoops. Oh, you weren't supposed to see that. Was this area here is a bus welder. This is called Bridge Zilwaukee Bridge. And it has an image in it. I would paint the older images that I was using. This is a shed up around Bay City where they would process tomatoes for canning, and it was all done by hand. And it shows this large cavernous facility where women were there peeling and sorting tomatoes. But anyway, let me see here next. What follows are images shown to give you an idea of my contemporary landscape paintings. They make up the majority of my studio practice since I rarely work on paper. And the show here is all the work that's on paper. But these are mostly installation photos shot during an exhibition that took place this time last year in Lake City, South Carolina at the Trax Visual Arts Center. Trax is a part of Artfields, a southeastern regional open arts competition that floods their small town with artwork every April. The town is about the size of Owasso, or perhaps Hawley. Many of these photos were taken by their photographer, Michael Baker. I won't take up too much time on the paintings, though I would love to exhibit and discuss them with you sometime in the future. However, I would like to take this opportunity to share thoughts on 2 points regarding my work. The first is a matter of style, and the second is what might best be called my mission question. I don't have a mission statement. I have a mission question. First, a matter of style. The author V.S. Naipaul, his novels include A House for Mr. Biswas and A Bend in the River, once stated, "Style is clarity." I don't need to clarify that, I don't think. He practiced what he preached. I try to paint images that look styleless to me. That is to say, where the paint delivers the image without drawing too much attention to the paint itself. The focus is intended to be on what is being painted rather than how it is being painted. Composition is key. It is an editing process. How does the composition work as a whole on the macro level? The goal is to enhance the viewer's experience of the environments that are being presented, minimizing attention paid to the painting process itself. This is in the hope of shifting the viewer's attention onto the what of the painting as a whole. I believe that it's true that how you say something is as or more important than what is being said. However, in the paintings, the intention is to focus on the what. Why landscape paintings at all, when they could be created digitally or photographed? Painting is a process of translation, taking an immediate experience or an experience photographed and then translating that into a painted image. Although traces of the photographs may remain evident in the final painting, the focus lies elsewhere. It lies in the faith that in the process of painting, a variety of experiences can be transformed into one. The painting process acts as a sieve through which the environments are pressed, combining many spaces into one experience. This mimics what our memory does to those spaces that we occupy. We fabricate a sense of place out of them. We compose an understanding of place through a sieve of remembered spaces. My studio questions. In order to share my mission questions, I'd like to paraphrase from an interview given by John Updike from around the year 2000, the millennium. John Updike was the author of Rabbit Run, Rabbit is Rich, and he also wrote many fine essays on art, including an interesting novel titled Seek My Face that I mentioned, but because that novel's central character is loosely based on the artist Lee Krasner, and it spins tales of artists working in the post-World War II New York art scene. An interviewer once asked John Updike, "Do you believe that the novel is dying?" John Updike replied, and this is all paraphrased, "No, because the novel, as an art form, speaks to a unique part of the human experience which the other art forms do not. If the novel ceased to exist, then we would lose a part of that which makes us human." This view implies that the various art forms, art disciplines, such as poetry, dance, opera, the blues, drama, comedy, and etc., they all exist because each tap into and communicate on some unique level with specific aspects of our shared human experience. This begged the question that I consider central to my own studio practice. Given that the discipline of painting has a long history, surviving as an art form across many civilizations and across millennia, what is it that is unique to painting as an art form? What does painting do best, and what does painting do better than the other art forms? I don't have definitive answers to these questions. However, they drive my landscape painting practice. This is an image of the most recently completed painting. It's titled Shimmy Shake. Shimmy Shake, some of you may remember, is a dance from the 50s, 60s, early 60s. And I like those dances that the title is the instructions, like the twist and Shimmy Shake. So I won't demonstrate it here tonight, but the factory interiors and ceilings. The painting Buick City, plant number 31, is currently out in the Dow Gallery, along with other work from the FIA's collection produced here in Michigan. This was the last large-scale factory interior painting completed. That subject, the factory interior, seemed to be calling for a medium that better conveyed how it had been changing for me over time. I haven't worked in a factory for many, many years. The factory experience seemed to be asking for a medium better suited to expressing how it is being relegated further and further back into memory. Watercolor has an inherent ethereal, dreamlike quality. The image in the watercolor lays somewhere just under the surface of the paper, not so much on top of the paper as with opaque paint. So watercolor seemed to be better suited for images living in memory rather than in daily experience. I had no interest in becoming a watercolorist. It is very different from acrylic on canvas paintings that I have been doing for many years. The subject matter made me do it. Why the factory ceilings? It has been a subject that I have returned to again and again. The urge to return to painting factory interiors has often been triggered by some news regarding the closing of a plant, particularly if that plant had been designed by Albert Kahn and Associates. I always believed that the factory ceiling imagery would resonate with people someday on some level. All the formalist aesthetic requirements are present in my mind. I find that there is plenty there to work with. We visit museums and are taken away to different worlds. We may be transported to 19th century Paris, ancient Greece, Northern Europe during the Middle Ages, any number of places, and to any number of periods in time. But not only can the museum take us back in time and away far away places, it can take us in as well, into our personal experience, and touch us where we live and even where we work. It is my hope that the work in fabrication and transit resonates with people here in Flint. It is offered in a spirit of appreciation to all those who have built and to all those who have provided. Thank you.